So in today's conversation, we talk about can dogs or should dogs eat vegetables? And my answer may surprise you.
Good girl.
Hello everybody, welcome to another controversial conversation. In this video we're going to talk about should I feed my dog vegetables. Like I said, this is going to be very controversial. Everybody has their own thoughts and opinions on the matter. I'm going to share my thoughts and opinions with you, and like I said earlier, my answer may surprise you. So I'm going to leave a bunch of citations and resources for you to look at in the description box below. I encourage you to take a look at them, and let's have a conversation. Let's be candid about this. I know, like I said, I know this is going to spur some controversy, but that is why I'm here, to give you guys the facts. And overall, we're going to look at this from a very scientific, factual, and most importantly, a common sense lens. And I know in modern day 2020, common sense is not also common, which is why it's so important to engage in and really use. So I hope you guys like the video. Let's get started. So to answer the question in a nutshell, the answer is sure, why not? I would say the first caveat that I would put on feeding your dog vegetables or even fruits for that matter is ensuring that it wouldn't be contraindicated to do so. So for example, there are many reputable organizations, think tanks, peer-reviewed research that state that foods like avocados, cherries, grapes, mushrooms, unripe tomatoes, onion, garlic is not good for your dog. I would also include corn, soy products, wheat, and other grains like that. I just think they're low quality, and I would never feed them to my dog. So I would include those as well. But overall, yeah, I'd say sure, dogs can eat certain fruits and vegetables. Why not? Unless your dog, like I said, has a sensitivity to a certain vegetable that you found through trial and error, or you found, based upon conversations you've had with your vet, etc. There are vegetables that you can feed your dog, and I don't think are going to have a negative impact. Overall, yes, sure, you can feed vegetables to your dog. But with that being said, I would have to, again, advise the first caveat being there are certain foods, fruits and vegetables that would be contraindicated, like the ones I mentioned, that you probably shouldn't feed. So let's look at the science. This man right here, Erik Axelsson, he's an evolutionary geneticist from Sweden, and him and his colleagues compared dogs and wolves on a DNA, on a molecular level. And it's really important that we understand his findings because they're very surprising, and it's really landmark in what we know about wolves versus the domestic dog. He found that domestic dogs had 4 to 30 copies of a gene for amylase, a protein that starts the breakdown of starch in the intestine, while wolves only have 2 copies of this on each chromosome. So as a result, that gene was 28-fold more active in the domestic dog. And the researchers found that the more copies the dog had, the better they were at digesting starches. In fact, the domestic dog has a 5 times better digestion of starch than their wolf counterpart. And this starch aids them in digesting everything from agricultural grains like wheat and rice to, vegetables and fruits. So I think this is really important that we understand, first off, that dog digestion and wolf digestion is clearly different, but also understanding the fact that, and realizing, I think it goes without saying, that dogs have been domesticated by human beings to be alongside human beings. And depending on where this, what diet you follow, if you are on a standard American diet, you consume a lot of starch. And dogs have adapted, and they continue to adapt to be alongside humans, which would mean they would have to be better at digesting starch. Now, with that being said, the real question and the nuance of this question is, well, what is 5 times better digestion of starch compared to an obligate carnivore like a wolf that, eats majority, meat products? I mean, I guess they would consume starch that is in the bellies in the intestines of the animals they consume. And that's really the nuance of the question that I'm going to expand upon, and why I've come to the conclusion that I've come to. But as a rule, this is the science that we have so far, and it's important to note dog digestion and wolf digestion are different. Dogs have been bred and domesticated, and through that domestication, their digestion compared to wolves are different. they can tolerate the digestion of starch 5 times better than their wolf counterparts. So with this in mind, let me tell you how I feel overall. So in my humble and honest opinion, yes, I do feed vegetables, but I do not feed them for their nutrient density. I feed them as a snack if they're available, but I will not depend on them for their nutrient profiles. So I do not consider them to be a reliable source of nutrition. And so when I feed them, I do not feed them with the attitude or the thought process that these vegetables are going to contribute to the dog's diet and nutritional capacity of any sorts. My diet, as you guys already know, I feed a raw diet, and I depend on the protein sources to get me to the RDA of what the dog needs based upon the nutrient density profiles of the meat that I feed, of the animal products I feed, and not based upon the vegetables that I feed. Because, in my humble opinion, there are too many unreliable factors in feeding vegetables and in vegetables in general. I consider them to be a very unreliable source of nutrition, and therefore I feed them as a snack. I will give them to my dog, but I will not depend on their nutrient profiles as a consideration for if the dog's getting their RDA of, for example, vitamin A, B, C, calcium, protein, anything like that. And so we'll talk about why that is. So one of the factors I take a look at is biological value. Biological value, BV for short, is a measurement of proteins in terms of how usable it is by the body and how easily it converts from being a food protein to a body protein. So things that are high biological value proteins would be animal products, essentially eggs, fish, poultry, lean meat, dairy products, etc. Things that would have low biological value would be things like grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, fruits, vegetables, etc. And I think this is important to note because you can have, for example, let's take corn for an example. Corn atypically has a biological value of around 40%. So if you have 100 grams of protein in corn, so you have enough corn to equal 100 grams of protein, for the body, it's only usable up to 40%. And then we're talking about in human beings. And human beings have adapted much better than dogs to digest starches, digest plant products. So if you're looking at this and comparing it to your dog, that would be even lower. And so I think it's really important to take this into consideration and understand that from a biological value standpoint, from the dog's ability to actually digest things, yes, they may be able to do it 5 times better than a wolf, but compared to a human, it's much, much lower. And if we find that with humans, our biological value for a certain fruit and vegetables only 40%, 50%, even 60%, that's a huge loss that you're getting just on the body's availability to take that food source and make it usable in the body. So I think that's really important to note, and it's really important to understand. This is one of the reasons why I don't factor at all the nutrient density of fruits and vegetables into the calculation for what my dog's RDA would be. Let's look at a few more factors as well. Let's look at modern day plant agriculture in 2020. Okay, so Donald Davis and his team of researchers at the University of Texas at the Austin Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry published in December 2004 in the Journal of American College of Nutrition a USDA nutritional data from 1950 to 1999 for 43 different vegetables and fruits. And they found reliable declines in the amount of protein, calcium, phosphorus, iron, B vitamins, vitamin C, and other micro and macro nutrients. So for an example, they found that potatoes lost over 90% of their vitamin A and 57% of their vitamin C between 1950 and 1999. They also found that you would have to eat 8 oranges in order to get the same amount of vitamin A as their grandparents got from 1 orange. So that's huge. I mean, think about it. You would have to consume 8 oranges just to get the same vitamin A content as your grandparents got from 1 single orange. So we're seeing reliable declines in the nutrient quality and nutrient density of produce that we're eating in modern day 2020. And this is directly linked to the fact that soil is simply a dead sponge by which big agriculture sprays on pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, dioxins, petrochemicals, fertilizers, right, in order to grow food. And so when you look at that and then you couple that with the fact that, your dog's ability to digest these starches are not as well as humans, you can definitely see that the amount of nutrients that they're actually getting from these fruits and vegetables is not very high, right? And then that's, obviously you have what the vegetable or fruit has nutrient-wise, and then you have the biological value of what your dog's actually able to obtain from it. And, based upon these two factors alone, I don't feel with any degree of confidence that I should be including the nutrient profiles of these so-called foods, these fruits and vegetables, into the overall consideration of what should be in my dog's diet per RDA. I just don't think it's very, I don't think it's very reliable, and I can't say with any degree of certainty that they're getting, quality from it. But that is not all. There is still another factor that I think is also alarming that we should also look at. Let's look at post-harvest nutrient losses. Penn State University in 2005 made a shocking discovery that plants can lose 30% of their nutrient density within 3 days of being harvested. And then they found that spinach can lose up to 90% of vitamin C within 24 hours of being harvested. That's huge. I mean, let's look at the implications of what we're talking about here. Not only are produce, fruits and vegetables, already at a depleted state based upon plant agriculture that we talked about earlier, but you take what little nutrient density they have left, and within 3 days, 72 hours, you have a 30% loss of nutrient density, and with spinach, up to 90% of vitamin C is lost within 24 hours. So by the time you even get it, which could take a week, usually produce can take up to a week before it's even on grocery store shelves, you're talking about a significant depletion of the already deficient nutrient density it had to start with. And then you couple that with the fact that your dog only has ability to obtain so much nutrition percentage-wise of that produce. You're talking about minimum returns on investment here. You're talking about minimum returns on the nutrient density that your dog is actually able to get from those plant sources. So for all these aforementioned reasons, I cannot say with any confidence that I should take into consideration the nutrient density of vegetable and fruits into account. Now, with that being said, yes, do I think you can feed vegetables to your dog? Absolutely. I don't think it's a problem. But the big problem is what you're feeding is this fibrous starch that has no real nutrient density to it. It has no real nutrient backing. And so I don't think that you should be, at least I'm not, taking that into consideration as far as the density of the food, and I am not depending on what the supposed density of that food is to help equate to any sort of confidence in my dog's getting certain vitamins from these plant sources. It's not happening for me. And for the aforementioned reasons, obviously I would never feed my dog a vegan diet, a plant-based diet, or a vegetarian diet. Any diet really that would depend on plants as the sole source or a majority source of where they would get their nutrition from, because I think the science is very clear, the facts are very clear, common sense is very clear that would be not such a good idea. So that is a long explanation for me just plainly saying, sure, yeah, feed your dog vegetables, feed him fruits, go for it, whatever. In my humble opinion, I would not recommend depending on them for any sort of nutritional value. I would not depend on them for using it to get to your dog's RDA in any capacity for phytonutrients, both micro or macro. So there you have it. I hope you guys liked the video. Like I said, I know this is going to be a controversial video, but one that's worth making, one that's worth talking about. I think that our dogs are man's best friend, and they are super important, vital in my life. I love them. They are part of my family, and so I think it's important that we take good care of them. So there you have it. Like I said before, I'll leave all the sources in the description box below. If you have any comments, please leave them. If you have any questions, please leave them. If you think I got this completely wrong, I'm all about challenging myself. Explain to me why these considerations and the aforementioned facts aren't relevant, and let's have a conversation. The only way we better ourselves is to challenge ourselves, whether that be physically, intellectually, etc. So, like I said, hope you guys liked the video. Leave me a comment if you'd like. And as always, guys, long live the Republic.